Watching Justin Gaethje all week get overlooked by Paddy Pimblett, by the betting companies. Everybody had him a massive underdog. But Justin Gaethje told anyone that would listen he was going to get the job done. That's exactly what he did tonight, becoming the interim champion for a second time. You know, Justin Gaethje, the first time he became interim champion, he threw the belt on the ground. Not anymore. Tonight he was gracious. He was grateful. He was happy to become the interim champion for a second.
The entire division just got set on fire. Not with some predictable knockout, but with pure, calculated violence that nobody saw coming. Justin Gaethje is holding gold again, and if you're sitting there thinking this makes no sense, you're absolutely right to feel that way. Because literally minutes before this happened, every expert, every analyst, every fan had already written the script. Gaethje was supposed to be the stepping stone, the aging gatekeeper getting his final payday before riding off into the sunset. Instead, he just reminded everyone why assumptions in this sport get people's careers destroyed. And Daniel Cormier's reaction? That wasn't commentary. That was a former champion watching the entire landscape of the division collapse in real time.
To become a world champion late into their 30s. Justin Gaethje did tonight. He's the oldest fighter ever to hold the championship at 155 pounds. And he did it against a guy that was intent on becoming a champion himself. Tonight was not an easy night for Justin Gaethje. Paddy Pimblett gave him everything he could have asked for and more. And he was able to step up at every turn. First round, Pimblett started well. Justin dropped him, looked like he was going to finish him. Pimblett survived. Second round, Justin drops him. Even more dominant in that round than he was in the first. Pimblett survives. Third round, I thought that Paddy Pimblett had the best round.
Here's what's keeping me up at night. All week long, Gaethje was treated like some relic from a different era. People were talking about him the way you talk about your grandfather's old car, with respect, sure, but also with that patronizing tone that says, "Thanks for your service, now step aside." The betting odds reflected it. The media coverage reflected it. Hell, even some of his own corner seemed like they were just hoping he'd make it competitive. But there was something in his eyes during fight week that nobody wanted to acknowledge. That dead, flat stare that doesn't belong to someone who's ready to retire. That belongs to someone who's been disrespected for so long that violence has become the only language they're interested in speaking. And when a fighter reaches that point, when they stop caring about anything except proving you wrong, that's when careers get ended.
Idea that you're going to win the fight and give the effort that it takes to win the fight. Pimblett showed that he has that and more. Look, Justin Gaethje became the interim champion tonight, and I'm so happy for him. He walked over after the fight and said, "I absolutely won," right? I said, "You are a sick son of a bitch." Because he went ahead like the old Justin Gaethje. That guy that was measured when he knocked out Dustin Poirier and beat Rafael Aziz was long gone. It was almost like he understood the assignment. We're on Paramount. There's a new network. There are going to be new fans. We need to introduce them to what the UFC is. I think after watching that, everybody...
That was 3 words. That's all DC managed to get out before his voice cracked with pure shock. And in that moment, you could feel the entire arena realize they weren't watching what they came to see. This wasn't the coronation everyone expected. This was a public execution of every narrative, every prediction, every carefully constructed ranking. When Daniel Cormier, a man who's been in wars with the most dangerous fighters on the planet, looks at another human being with that mixture of terror and awe, you need to start paying attention. Because what he saw in that cage wasn't just good technique or lucky timing. He saw something primal, something that can't be taught or manufactured. He saw a man who had made peace with violence in a way that most fighters never do.
There's a new network. There are going to be new fans. We need to introduce them to what the UFC is. I think after watching that, everybody that was tuned in are going to be lifelong fans of the UFC. Because on the special nights, there is not a sport in the world that can compare to the UFC. And tonight we have one of those special nights. You know, very rarely does a guy elevate in a loss as much as I believe Paddy Pimblett will elevate in this loss tonight. So many people wanted to call him a hype job. So many people wanted to pretend that this kid didn't deserve to be here tonight. That this kid was not a viable challenge.
But here's where everyone's getting this completely wrong. They want to break down the technical aspects, analyze the striking stats, debate whether it was skill or luck. That's missing the entire point of what just happened. This wasn't about perfect technique. This was about will. This was about one man deciding that he was going to keep walking forward no matter what kind of hell was waiting for him. Geith didn't just throw punches tonight. He threw himself into every exchange like he was daring the universe to stop him. Like every collision was proof that he could take more, give more, and survive more than anyone else in that division. And that kind of belief, that unshakable conviction, it doesn't just hit you physically. It gets into your head, starts eating away at your confidence, makes you question everything you thought you knew about yourself.
People wanted to call him a hype job. So many people wanted to pretend that this kid didn't deserve to be here tonight, that this kid was not a viable challenger for a world title. Tonight he proved that. All that, he hasn't fought anybody in the top 5 yet, none of the best guys. I don't ever want to hear that again. Because what I saw tonight was a kid that has a big future, that has a ton of ability to really challenge the best fighters in the world, and he will do that consistently for a really, really long time. I know Paddy was very disappointed, but he needs to keep his head up. Because I thought tonight he fought well, he represented himself.
Now here's the part that should terrify everyone in that weight class. Paddy Pimblett didn't quit, not when he got dropped, not when the exit door was wide open and nobody would have blamed him for taking it. He kept fighting, kept trying, kept believing he could turn it around. And losses like that, the ones where you show heart but still get broken down piece by piece, those don't just disappear, they evolve. They create a different kind of fighter, one who's been tested in the worst possible way and survived. Someone very high up in the UFC hierarchy is looking at this result right now and having an absolute panic attack, because they didn't just lose their prospect, they created a more dangerous version of him. And Geith, he just proved that all those young, hungry fighters everyone's been hyping up aren't ready for what real experience and controlled violence can do to them.
His speech showed the maturity. He said it felt so good to win, right? So good to win. Wins are hard to come by in this thing, especially when you're one of the best fighters in the world and you're fighting world champions, or you are a world champion. I think tonight that showed in Sean O'Malley getting the victory. Now, is that enough to warrant him getting the title fight? I don't know. I don't think so. I think that he needed to do more. He knew that he needed to have a beautiful performance. I thought a beautiful performance meant something like a finish, but he didn't get that. But he did get a victory. So hats off to Sean.
What's messing with my head is seeing this version of Justin Geith. This isn't the same wild man who threw away his belt like it was cursed, who couldn't handle the pressure of being champion. This was a man standing in that cage afterward, genuinely grateful, almost emotional, thanking everyone like he knew how close he came to never getting this chance again. He understood the stakes. He understood what this meant. And that evolution, that combination of gratitude and controlled destruction, is absolutely terrifying. Because when chaos learns patience, when violence learns discipline, it stops being random and starts being inevitable. The entire division just watched experience not just survive youth and hunger, but completely dominate it. And that's going to force some very uncomfortable conversations in training camps across the world.
I thought a beautiful performance meant something like a finish, but he didn't get that. But he did get a victory. So hats off to Sean O'Malley. Derek Lewis got finished by Waldo Cortez Acosta. A lot of people ask me, is Derek Lewis still that guy? I think tonight we learned the answer to that, and he isn't. Cortez Acosta is very, very good. But the way the fight ended was very tricky to me. I wanted to see Derek throw, but he seemed too slow. He seemed to step behind the entire fight between Waldo.
Everyone keeps talking about Geith's age like it's some cute trivia fact for social media. Can you believe he's still doing this at his age? That completely misses what actually happened tonight. This wasn't some feel-good story about an old dog learning new tricks. This was a masterclass in why experience matters more than speed, why wisdom trumps athleticism, and why the young lions everyone's been crowning aren't ready for what the old guard can still bring. When an entire division built on youth and hunger watches experience methodically dismantle their future, it creates doubt. It makes prospects question their coaches. It makes veterans realize they might have more left in the tank than they thought. And it makes matchmakers realize their carefully constructed plans just went up in smoke.
A finish gets a $25,000 bonus. For a guy like Ty Miller, who gets 12 and 12, 14 and 14, that's almost double his salary. So now you can start to see everything trickle down. Told you that this deal would benefit everyone. And I think that right there is one of the things. And also, the bonus went to $100,000 for performance of the night, and fight of the night. There are opportunities now. It's on the fighters to go and cash in and make those opportunities matter by getting finishes. Hey, Paramount wanted the UFC. They got the UFC at its best tonight.
Round after round, this fight kept threatening to flip completely upside down. Every time you thought momentum was shifting, it snapped back harder and more violently. Because in that cage, traditional momentum meant nothing. What mattered was damage. What mattered was the refusal to break. And those near finishes, those moments where it looked like it was over but somehow wasn't, were worse than any clean knockout could have been. They stretched out the mental torture, amplified the doubt, magnified the fear. And fear lingers longer than any knockout ever could. Someone fundamentally underestimated the psychological warfare happening in that octagon. Pressure isn't just physical, it's emotional erosion. It's the slow, steady wearing down of someone's spirit. And Gieth applied it like a tax that had to be paid every second Pimblett stayed in there. Here's where the paranoia starts creeping in for everyone involved. Moments like this expose cracks in the carefully constructed narratives. They reveal that rankings don't mean what we thought they meant. They show that the future isn't as predictable as the promotional machine wants us to believe. Right now, there are fighters smiling for the cameras who are secretly running every possible scenario through their heads. They're wondering if their plans need to change. They're wondering if they just dodged a bullet by not being in that cage. They're wondering who's next. Because fights like this don't just introduce you to violence. They infect you with it. They make you stay up late replaying moments, feeling that pit of dread in your stomach, realizing how thin the line is between celebration and catastrophe. So there you have it. The division's been turned upside down, the young prospect got a brutal education, and the old guard just reminded everyone why experience and controlled violence still matter more than hype and potential. This isn't just about one fight. This is about the entire future of the weight class, about who's really ready for championship-level warfare, and about whether the next generation can handle what legends like Gieth can still bring. Here's my question for you, drop it in the comments. Do you think this changes everything, or is Gieth just delaying the inevitable youth movement? If this breakdown opened your eyes to what really went down tonight, smash that like button, subscribe for more fight breakdowns that go deeper than the surface, and hit that notification bell because this division is about to get even more chaotic. I'll see you in the next one. The real nightmare scenario that nobody's talking about. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not like this. Not with this level of dominance. Somewhere in a boardroom, executives are scrambling to rewrite promotional campaigns, rethink main event slots, and figure out how to explain to shareholders why their carefully crafted storylines just got obliterated by a man they were ready to put out to pasture. Because here's the brutal truth about this business. It's built on predictable narratives. Young star rises, old legend falls, torch gets passed, money gets made. But Gieth just took that entire formula and fed it into a wood chipper. He didn't just win. He made it look easy. And that kind of result sends shockwaves through an industry that depends on knowing what comes next. Think about the ripple effects this creates across the entire sport. Every up-and-coming fighter who thought they had the blueprint figured out just watched it get completely dismantled. Every coach who's been selling the youth beats experience, narrative to their prospects, is having some very uncomfortable conversations right now. Every veteran who was thinking about hanging up the gloves just got a massive shot of adrenaline. This isn't just about lightweight rankings. This is about the fundamental assumptions that drive this entire sport. And when those assumptions get shattered this violently, it creates opportunities for fighters who thought their time was over, and nightmares for fighters who thought their time was now. But let's talk about what this does to Paddy Pimblett's psyche moving forward. Getting knocked out is one thing. Your lights go out, you wake up confused, and you can tell yourself it was just one bad moment. But getting systematically broken down over multiple rounds while staying conscious for every second of it, that's psychological warfare at its most brutal. Pimblett felt every shot land. He experienced every moment of his game plan falling apart. He lived through the slow realization that nothing he was doing was working. And that kind of education doesn't just affect your next fight. It affects how you train, how you sleep, how you approach every aspect of competition for the rest of your career. Here's what's really messing with veteran fighters' heads right now. They've been watching prospects get fast-tracked to title shots, getting main events based on social media followers instead of actual accomplishments. They've been told their time is over, that the sport has passed them by, that they should be grateful for whatever scraps they can get. But Geith just proved that experience isn't just valuable, it's devastating when applied correctly. He didn't try to match Pimblett's energy or play his game. He imposed his will, controlled the pace, and systematically dismantled someone who was supposed to represent the future. That's not luck. That's not a fluke. That's the result of years of high-level warfare creating something that can't be replicated in any gym. The timing of this couldn't be more perfect or more terrifying depending on which side of it you're on. We're in an era where every division is supposedly being taken over by young, hungry athletes who train smarter, recover faster, and adapt quicker than the old guard. But what happens when that old guard refuses to step aside? What happens when experience decides it's not done teaching lessons? Geith just answered that question in the most violent way possible. He showed that there are levels to this game that can't be reached through potential alone. There are depths of toughness that only come from surviving wars with killers. There are techniques that only get mastered through years of applying them against world-class opposition. And let's be honest about what Daniel Cormier's reaction really represented. This is a man who's seen everything. He's been in there with John Jones twice. He's fought Stipe Miocic in wars that redefined heavyweight violence. He's called fights involving the most dangerous athletes on the planet. But watching Geith's work, seeing that level of controlled destruction applied with such precision, it reminded him of something fundamental about combat sports. Technique is important. Athleticism matters. But the ability to inflict your will on another human being through sheer force of personality. That's what separates champions from contenders. And Geith demonstrated that quality in a way that made a former two-division champion genuinely uncomfortable. What's keeping matchmakers awake tonight is the realization that their entire division just got reshuffled by someone they thought was on his way out. Every carefully planned trajectory for rising contenders just hit a massive roadblock. Every promotional push built around youth versus experience narratives just became infinitely more complicated. Because now they have to explain why the aging veteran just made their future star look completely outclassed. They have to justify why someone who was supposedly past his prime is holding gold while their hand-picked prospects are back to the drawing board. This result doesn't just affect rankings. It affects marketing campaigns, pay-per-view plans, and the entire story they've been trying to tell about where this division is heading. The psychological damage extends far beyond just Pimblett. Every young fighter in that weight class just watched their peer get systematically dismantled by someone they were told was vulnerable. They saw technique, heart, and determination get overwhelmed by experience and controlled violence. And that creates doubt, not just about their own abilities, but about everything they've been told about how this sport works. When you build your confidence on the assumption that youth and hunger will eventually overcome experience, watching experience dominate so completely forces you to question everything. It makes you wonder if your coaches really know what they're talking about. It makes you wonder if you're as ready as everyone keeps telling you that you are. Here's the part that should terrify every prospect in that division. Geith didn't just win this fight. He looked comfortable doing it. He looked like he belonged exactly where he was, doing exactly what he was doing. There was no desperation, no panic, no sense that he was fighting father time or trying to prove something to critics. He just went to work. And that calm confidence, that total belief in his ability to handle whatever was thrown at him, is what separates elite fighters from everyone else. It's what allows them to perform when the lights are brightest and the stakes are highest. And it's exactly what most prospects don't have yet, no matter how much potential they're carrying. The business implications of this result are staggering when you really think about them. Promotional companies invest millions in building up prospects, creating storylines, and developing marketable personalities. They count on those investments paying off through championship runs and pay-per-view buys. But what happens when those carefully cultivated prospects run into veterans who refuse to play their assigned role? What happens when the aging gatekeepers decide they're not ready to be gatekeepers yet? Geith just cost someone a lot of money in projected future earnings. He disrupted promotional timelines, complicated marketing strategies, and proved that this sport is still unpredictable enough to destroy the best-laid plans. But there's something deeper happening here that goes beyond just one fight result. We're witnessing a generational clash that's been building for years. The old school versus the new school. Traditional toughness versus modern training methods. Proven experience versus untested potential. And for one night, the old school didn't just win, it dominated. It made the new school look unprepared, overmatched, and fundamentally lacking in the kind of deep-level toughness that only comes from surviving real wars. That's not a judgment on anyone's character or potential. It's just recognition that there are aspects of fighting that can't be taught in any gym or developed through any training method except time and violence. The mental warfare aspect of what Geith accomplished cannot be overstated. Every exchange, every clinch, every moment of contact was designed to send a message, not just to Pimblett, but to everyone watching. The message was simple. I've been here before, I know how to handle this pressure, and I'm not going anywhere until I decide I'm ready to leave. That kind of psychological dominance affects everyone in the division. It makes contenders second-guess their readiness. It makes champions wonder if they really want to deal with that level of controlled violence. It makes prospects realize that getting to the top might be harder than they thought. So here's where we stand now. The division has a new champion who was supposed to be past his prime. The future star is back to prospect status with serious questions about his readiness for elite competition. And every other fighter in the weight class is trying to figure out what this means for their own career trajectory. This isn't just a changing of the guard. This is the guard refusing to change and proving they still have the power to determine who gets to sit at the big kids' table. The next few months are going to reveal whether this was a temporary setback for the youth movement or the beginning of a veteran renaissance that nobody saw coming.